Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we're going to read some more channelings from Quo. As I always say, go back to the original episodes where I describe or talk about Quo. We've kind of updated our understandings of Quo with each episode. If you have not heard of Quo, Quo is sort of a conglomerate of higher level spiritual beings that are channeling through a group called LL Research that teach and educate about spiritual matters. The fact that it's channeled is not really that important. A lot of the information is powerful in the way they word it and teach it, and I have found incredible knowledge from these channelings that has really helped me on my spiritual path. If you read the comments on these channelings, you'll also find the same thing, that people have been inspired and have learned a number of things from these channelings. The fact that it's channeled or not doesn't matter. Today's channeling focuses on storytelling, something I'm very interested in what they have to say. I am fascinated by stories, every kind of story. I love to read books, and I have read thousands and thousands of them. I've wondered if that affects me spiritually and what it is about my desire to enter into a world of imagination and story and how it reflects my spiritual path. They ask Quo the same question, also covering topics like loving the self, experiences in variety, gardening, and a variety of other topics. Jim channeling begins, I am Quo, and we greet you in love and in light. We are pleased to be called to your circle again today. We are amused that this instrument was waiting for us to speak through another instrument, as this instrument was somewhat perplexed itself. We appreciate the service to others aspect of waiting for another to speak. However, in this instance, it would be more helpful if this instrument had more awareness of our presence. We do not walk with heavy feet, so we need to be invited. And we thank each of you for the invitation this day, that we may be with you as you seek to be of service as instruments of what you have called Confederation philosophy, the philosophy of unity in which there is one creator that has made all there is, and all that there is seeks to return in some fashion, eventually to be one. Today we are happy to be able to utilize each instrument, and at this time, in this process of practicing the art of channeling, we would seek to practice through the one known as Austin. We transfer this contact, therefore, to this instrument. We are those of Quo. Austin channeling. We are Quo, and we are with this instrument. We appreciate the fluid nature of your group navigates the strangeness and confusion of the channeling process, and we ourselves find much comfort in the dedication and intention shown by this group and all aspects of approaching the service that we perform with you. As such, we offer our typical request that all who may hear or read these words spoken through these instruments trust their inner heart most of all, for no thought or notion offered by us may override that which you know in your deepest self to be true. We offer our thoughts without attachment and ask that if you find any to be a hindrance upon your path, as best you can, set them aside. And in doing so, you will allow us to speak more freely and participate in the sharing more as equals with us. At this time, we ask if there are any questions among this group to which we may speak. Gary asks, quote, thanks to receiving a Kindle as a gift recently, I've rediscovered the joy of reading fiction. And in fact, I've read 2,200 pages over the course of 30 days by reading just before sleep each night, often cutting into sleep. It has been bliss. In the immersive experience of story, I find a place of rest, a quelling of anxiety, a balm for the soul, and an engagement for other or deeper parts of myself. My question is, why is story so compelling? Most of the reading I mention has been an epic fantasy series. I know that I am reading fictional characters in an entirely fictional world, yet I come to know these characters. I come to see their world, and my emotions rise and fall with their fates. What power does storytelling hold on human consciousness? We are Quo, and we are aware of the query, my brother. We appreciate the joy and passion with which this question is asked, and suggest that this underlying magnetism that compels the joy behind this question be seen as one of the uniting threads that binds the individual to what you may call the imaginary realms in which these stories take place. When engaging with this so-called fictional story, one in which it is made explicit that the world, the character, and the situation are indeed derived from the imagination, there is a certain release of attachment from what you may somewhat mistakenly call the real world. If you look out upon what appears to be your objective realities, you will see many stories containing many highs and many lows. You will see a cast of characters that no imagination could come close to conjuring. Yet all of these aspects that weave together to form the story of the so-called real world are so innately complex, their energies so bound by the illusion that you experience, that the effect that they have on consciousness more often than not is one of burden. For it is by design that your third density illusion carries a certain weight within your consciousness. What you call the real world is indeed intended to feel more significant than those realms imagined in the stories that you reference. This significance, or weight, has a purpose, for it is necessary to generate what you might call the metaphysical friction necessary to move your consciousness in a way that polarizes it towards what has been called service to others or service to self. Yet this weight also obscures and hides the more essential nature of the underlying energies playing out upon the stage of the real world. An entity within the third density understandably may become predisposed to seeing the characters and the worlds and the scenarios that play out in this story as requiring more consideration and more attention than those in imagined stories. We reiterate that this is by intention. Yet one is able to remove the weight of these real-world stories by engaging in what you might call an imagined world. The energies that these two worlds have in common become clearer. You are more easily able to perceive that which moves you and moves those about you because the weight of significance has been alleviated. We assure you that these energies that you perceive that draw you in are indeed very real, and story allows you to engage them in a way that evokes a much more direct connection, unburdened by the tangle of complexity of the story of the real world. In creating this seeming dichotomy, we do not intend to place significance upon one over the other. It is indeed also by design that you as beings, veiled within the third density, are blessed with the capacity to imagine, to create worlds, to share all manner of fantasy, of emotion, of joy, of despair, and of the entire spectrum of your experience separated from the shared objective reality around you, thus creating a dynamic in which one may feed the other by engaging in story and the energies more readily perceivable therein. You may imbue your orientation to the seemingly more real world with that connection, and by engaging with this real world in more and more organized and light-filled ways, the limits of imagination available to you as a storyteller yourself, or to others about you as storytellers, expands, and more of that essential energy of the creator in more and more distilled form becomes available to share through this inspiration and imagination. Is there a further query, my brother? In a similar vein, and that was outstanding, quote, thank you. For those who do tell stories, where from in the being or in the creation do they come? Which is probably similar to asking, where does creativity and imagination itself come from? But specifically with regard to story and seemingly invented worlds and invented scenarios, is it possible to speak to the source of these creative undertakings? We are quo and we are aware of the query, my brother. It is impossible to speak directly to the sources of inspiration, for doing so is to speak to the nature of infinity. Yet we understand the more basic intention of your question, and may offer examples of the pathways of inspiration that inform the imaginative storytelling. At the most basic and primal level of creation, in this octave of experience, the energy available to the inspiration is that which has been harvested from the previous octaves. All subsequent manifestations of energy, those that are found by the individual's inspirations, have been increasingly reiterative examples of this original energy. And as this plays out within this octave, what you recognize as basic archetypical energies, recognizable in your world as consistent themes among mythology and the old stories of your peoples, these energies become more and more complex and reflect more and more of the evolution of the creator as it is seen from your perspective through the octave. And so you may see a direct line within all inspiration to that seed at the beginning of your octave, for the energy of that initial harvest is present in all aspects of creation on an even more relevant level for you in your third density. Such inspiration may have many sources in terms of previous experience, harvested by the individuals or by the collective to which the individual belongs. When a storyteller depicts any aspect of an imaginary realm, this is a reiteration, a retelling, and an outgrowth from a previous iteration of archetypal energies. With each iteration, some energies may be woven in more complex ways, and some may be unraveled to reveal more easily recognizable patterns within those energies. Yet we reiterate that within all is the energy upon which this octave was born, and even deeper the love and the light of the infinite creator from which every octave unfolds. Is there a further query, my brother? Excellent, thank you so much, Quo, and one more in a similar vein. And a quick comment to say that your previous answer regarding the reiterative nature of inspiration having a direct line to the original thought as I interpret it reminds me as well of the sublogoic nature of all of creation. Now, to my similar question, I was contemplating how Ra calls the fourth density the density of love and understanding, and I was considering the interrelated, if not synonymous, nature of the terms love and understanding. And I was thinking about how storytelling may give some insight into how fourth density, or rather into how love and understanding relate. Because in a story, one may gain a fuller window into another self than one may be able to in the illusion of the real world. Thanks to the window that the author offers, you may be able to be in the thoughts of the character, to see their motivations, to see the circumstances that helped form them, to understand their intentions. And in the light of understanding, one has compassion for the character, even if, or regardless of, their misdeeds and the way they may hurt others. Now I'm wondering if the authorial window into a character sheds light on what Ra means by understanding being related to love in the fourth density. We are Quo, and are aware of your query, my brother. We appreciate the insight offered through the question and can confirm that the relationship between the fourth density and what is called in this question understanding may be explored in the analogy of the author and the story and the reader. As we spoke earlier, the weight of your third density illusion can create certain barriers in the perception of other self and of the environment around oneself. On a most basic level, you may see this barrier as a barrier to understanding, as you have described within your thoughtful query. It is very common, even among those exploring the energies of the green ray chakra, to look out upon your world and evaluate action as it appears to play out upon the surface, if you will, of your reality. It is less common to imbue this perception of action with the understanding of intention or those energies that underlie such actions, as you have described, in gaining insight into an imaginary world authored by an individual who chooses to give the reader the benefits of various perspectives typically unavailable to the third density entity within their everyday life. A reader may take in a more holistic view of such energies, seeing how there is much more to what one perceives than the direct actions and consequences upon the surface level. In the fourth density of love and understanding, the perspective that an entity has is much more of the reader of a story. As the veil falls away, the underlying actions we correct this instrument, the underlying energies that contribute to those actions and consequences that play out upon a surface level become immediately apparent, so that the two are seen as inextricably linked. And furthermore, the authorial nature of every entity in every scenario is made quite apparent to the fourth density entity, and that is that no matter what is playing out in the story witnessed by the fourth density entity, it is always understood that the author of this story is the one infinite creator, and the story is made of the love and the light offered by the creator to its creation. We thank you for these thoughtful questions, my brother. At this time, we take leave of this instrument and we transfer the contact to the one known as Trish. We are Quo. We are those of Quo, and we are now with this instrument. We would like to begin by providing some encouragement within this instrument to relax a bit deeper into acceptance and allow us to speak more clearly to her. With this instrument now feeling as though she has strengthened and widened her connection with and through us, we will ask if there is a question at this time. Yes, Quo. In description of the positive path there seems to be a necessity placed on loving the self. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on what the key is to loving the self, supporting the self, trusting the self, allowing the self to fail, etc. Quo. We are those of Quo, and we understand the query. We apologetically perhaps feel a desire to smirk or chuckle, perhaps on behalf of this instrument and this question, knowing full well that this has been a lifelong lesson for this instrument to learn. However, we are very appreciative to speak through her on this topic. In terms of the positive path and the key of loving oneself, we present this instrument with the image of a vessel and how in the positive path, being one of service to others, the entity strives to gift other selves in need or not in need, with portions of that which they keep in this beloved vessel of their heart and soul. What is within this vessel is love and compassion, and what a noble task to take upon oneself to gift the love and compassion which one keeps with their heart and soul in the, shall we say, illusionary vessel within them. However, this vessel being used so frequently in service to others requires replenishing, if not taken upon the self to mind its quantities, if you will, and herein lies the moment when the love and compassion of self make an entrance into the positive path and the service to others' journey. For you see, your vessel of love and compassion from the heart and soul is built tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold. With each experience and treasured opportunity, the self has to see the self as creator and love the self and accept the self. For you see, when one is able to see the true nature of the self being one with all, one is able to release the inhibitions or bars one keeps around one loving oneself, to view the self with the eyes of a beloved parent witnessing the growth and learning of the child. One can begin to see how the gentle and forgiving and accepting perspective and disposition are far more nurturing, and for lack of a better word, influential to one's ability to continue on this trajectory of growth. It is worthy of being noted that as a minute grain of sand within your illusion of the vastness of experience the Creator is offering moment by moment within this illusion, one can see how moments of perhaps misforecasted or unexpected or even unfavorable outcomes are simply moments of opportunity to take on the responsibility, if you will, of allowing the experience for the creatorship that is all. We know that it can be difficult in moments of pain or confusion to accept outcomes, especially when the self may perhaps feel at fault, for lack of a better word, for the outcome. But we stress that this is but a moment within a greater play, a greater cosmic tapestry, and you are but one small thread in each experience or not. We hope that we are conveying through this instrument that the kind and gentle hand that extends to the self within oneself creates the environment or conditions wherein the self can grow and learn and open one's heart fuller and move along the positive path. And with each moment of acceptance and loving the self and seeing the Creator in oneself, accepting everything that may be seen as folly or misstep, with gentle eyes, one's vessel becomes larger and more love and acceptance and compassion for others can be held within to gift outwardly. So we ask that each seeker who may struggle with moments of self-criticism and self-doubt, imagine the warmth of a tight hug, a kind warm hand upon the face to wipe away the tears, and see yourself for the beautiful, unique, yet completely encapsulating of all that there is self, that you are the portion. We correct this instrument, not the portion, but the all, the Creator that you are. We feel that this instrument is saying that she has milked that cow dry. We will attempt another query if there is one. Thank you so much, Quo. That was excellent. And I don't think that cow was dry, but it was a very beautiful and full answer. And another question that is related to, if not an extension of, the previous question. This one comes from Spencer, who asks, how do we rise from the ashes of a mistake that we feel is irredeemable? We are those of Quo, and we are again with this instrument and appreciate the follow-up query. And we see that indeed this instrument has not milked this cow dry, and I appreciate this opportunity for humility. To begin through this instrument to speak through, or rather we correct this instrument to the question put forth by the one known as Spencer. The instrument feels heartache and familiarity with this specific experience. And we of Quo sense that deep pain that many on your planet experience related to this perspective many of you take. We understand that you and every other seeker in this illusion dance within this sea of identification and relationship and compartmentalization, if you will, of seeing oneself as separate from other, or perhaps separate from outcome, while simultaneously being a full participant with responsibility for one's actions in your incarnation. However, we stress that there are truly no mistakes. What feels like an action or a thought that is irredeemable is rather a spotlight upon the self, where the self can pour love upon. With this, we mean that the sensation of having done upon another self or a situation or oneself a great injustice is something to sit with and find the truth behind that sensation. Ask yourself, what is this telling me? Where do I need to send my love and learn to accept my actions with gentleness and a zest for growth and learning? As has been said previously, within the many generations of this particular circle, we are all but bozos on the bus, and moments like this are opportunities to take a small step back and see the self with loving and kind eyes, knowing that the experience itself is an opportunity rife with potential. We pause to try to deepen the contact with this instrument. We ask that a seeker dealing with guilt and perhaps devaluing thoughts of oneself because of actions or thoughts previously experienced, that one remember that you are divine, that you are a participant in this chaotic but perfectly formulated, almost cosmic reaction of various components. And we remind the seeker, just as we are reminding this instrument, that all is well, and that a path of service to others and love and acceptance of oneself may not always be easy or confidence boosting, but is fruitful and righteous. Feeling that she is fatiguing and potentially making up new words in the English language, this instrument will now release our contact and transfer to the one known as Gary. We are those known to you as Quo, and we greet the circle again through this instrument, and we ask if there is a query to which we may respond. Yes, Quo. The first one comes from an unnamed seeker. There are several kind of smaller questions about the same topic in this. They write, Ra has said that some of their complex have served as far wanderers to those of another logos, and the experience has been one which staggers the intellectual and intuitive capacities. With this in mind, how varied is the experience of entities across the universe, that others of our sun have elementary schools and traffics and banks, and then the entities outside of our logos have staggeringly different cultures. Does the one infinite creator benefit from the same way of each experience? Is an infinite continuation of the exploration of manyness infinitely satisfying? And how can we as individuals celebrate our differences and seek to understand, not to be understood? We are those known to you as Quo, and we appreciate the variety of questions packed into that one. And we would speak first to that which caught the attention, that being the variation and diversity on an infinite creation, such that an entity built within one seeming paradigm might find their capacities for comprehension staggered when entering another paradigm, which may have a cosmic location elsewhere in the universe. And indeed, we can confirm that this is so, for our perception is molded of the rules, the physics, the boundaries of the environment within which the self gains self-awareness and learns about itself within such a container. Indeed, the identity of the self consists of those aspects of their native paradigm, for identity itself is an identification with the contents of consciousness, the contents of experience in one's environment. For example, if one were to breathe a combination of gases into their lungs to respirate their body and bring vital life and energy and supply into themselves, then an identity will be shaped in that regard. A mythology will evolve, which includes air, as you call it, in this manner. And this breathing of air will permeate the foundations of that entity's collective, such that were an identity so set in stone, shall we say, to experience a completely seemingly different environment, say one which takes in a liquid form for its energy supply and manifested beingness in the space-time illusion, then this in simplistic example may be confounding to the archetypal roots of such an entity. However, we emphasize that this is but a simplistic example, for we cannot speak beyond the creative imaginings of this instrument to describe accurately just how staggering and wondrous are the differences between the logoic systems in our octave. We would add that while these differences are befuddling, the infinite adaptive and creative capacity and indeed fluidity of mind-body-spirit complexes is capable of calibrating to new environments, though it does test and challenge the self and is only undertaken by, shall we say, specialists. Is this diversity satisfying to the Creator? The quality of satisfaction, as any named quality, has in your experience personification. That is to say, named emotions are known to you through the limited containers of human experience. To speak to that which the one experiences on its level is nigh impossible through the limitations of your language, but we can point to a certain, for lack of a better term, fulfillment in the Creator's experience of itself across infinite octaves, infinite entities, and scenarios. If it could be said to be called a hunger or a need, it might be appropriate to say that the Creator has such a desire to know itself in every possible capacity, and to give itself, again, to speak only in metaphor, the thrill of discovery through novelty. And it has been impressed upon us that this shall continue without end and cyclically into the eternal present moment. If there are aspects of this question to which we have not spoken, or if there is another query, we open the floor again. We are those of Quo. I've got a related follow-up to the last topic that you were just talking about in regards to the variety of experiences that the Creator, you said, has a desire to experience. But then within our octave and within our experience, and from what the Confederation has told us, there's also a desire for efficiency of polarization as the Logoi continuously revise their experiments to help entities polarize. So I'm wondering, where does this desire for efficiency and polarization come from? Does it come from the Creator, or is there something else that is causing that desire? We are those known to you as Quo, and we appreciate this perceptive question, for indeed, the characters on the Creator's stage, the agents of the Creator enacting the great story of the Creator knowing itself, bend their efforts towards increasing this efficiency or aligning with efficiency. And if evolutionary processes unfold which are, or shall we say, deviate from efficiency, lag behind, fail, you might say, in their purpose, or otherwise do not complete the task or fulfill the design before them, then the gears are put into motion to assist such entities to help, if possible, encourage them forward in their task and their mission. And at the high level, shall we say, there is a constant review of the experiment itself, the design, the inputs, that which contributes to efficient or inefficient use of catalyst and experience. Wherefrom does this desire for efficiency arise? We give this instrument the notion that it is an expression of the original desire, which is for entities to seek and to become one. At the heart of all creation, even in those things which seem inanimate and inert to you, lives this desire, for all things are alive expressions of the One, and all things in the manifest illusionary state seek to return to the One. Indeed, they have an inbuilt trajectory which in blueprint pattern is embedded into their beings to help carry them on their journey, such that, and we use this word without judgment or a pejorative connotation, failure to complete their tasks appropriate to the level of consciousness does kick into gear that which will help create some counterbalancing mechanism to push or encourage toward efficiency. The Creator, at the earliest, if we may use this misnomer, stage of becoming aware and designing the universe, does desire upward movement. It does have a design or impulse, a settling of intention as you might perceive it. However, desires that those who journey forth as manifest entities in its game of play, of knowing itself, will do so as a function of their free will, and as such may in a way have the freedom to deviate from the original desire by blocking it, rejecting it, or retarding its experience. And that too, of course, is part of the design. But it is also, shall we say, akin to blocking the flow of river, or blocking that which naturally seeks to move, to reach, to ascend upward, such that blockage will call into play that which seeks to unblock. Even though due to the incarnate free will, this figurative blockage may remain for quite some time, as you would perceive it. May we ask if there is a final, smaller query at this time? I think this is smaller, sorry if it's not. Paul writes in 60.16, Raw states, "It is our observation that due to the complexity of influences upon the unmanifested being at this time-space nexus among your planetary peoples, it is best that the progress of the mind-body-spirit complex takes place without, as you call it, training aids. What are these complexes, influences upon our unmanifest beings at this time? We are those known to you as Quo, and we appreciate this question from the one known as Paul. We give the instrument the image or idea of a simple existence with a fewer inputs and variables versus a complex existence with a greater variety and quantity of inputs and variables that is considered what you would call primitive peoples, or perhaps those early in their experience in self-awareness of third density. Their day-to-day experience prior to the formation of complex societies, though not without social experience, may center on such fewer considerations than you in your present experience might entertain. The acquisition of food and shelter, the necessity for procreation, protection from danger or threat, perhaps done in consideration of mythology to help them intellectually grasp their situation and the natural processes around them. We encourage the questioner to spend some time considering just how much less stimulation and input and ethical considerations there are for the third density entity in this situation, and then to contrast that situation to your present experience, which would be impossible to inventory in full. But we may make some headway by asking the one known as Paul to consider the sound or cacophony even that the increasing awareness of voices from around the world create for both the manifested and the unmanifested self. The diversity and range of cultures, archetypal motifs, worldviews, biases is outstanding and overwhelming, producing a society that has perennial difficulty unifying as a globe, much less as even homogeneous cultures unto themselves. Each day, even on the unmanifest level, is filled with so many more considerations, complications, and difficulties, even being with the unmanifested being, as the influences about one tend to occupy the attention fully as they move in rapid succession from one to the other, making it difficult to sustain the attention on the unmanifested being. The instrument looks to us for slightly more before releasing the contact, and perhaps we can say that in a simpler society, a more harmonious and unified society, the unmanifested self has, shall we say, greater space for being, greater capacity for a united, less challenged focus. At this time, we give thanks to the circle and transfer this contact to the one known as Jim. We are those of Quo. I am Quo, and I'm with this instrument at this time. We are now available for the query that this instrument may share our response with those present. Is there a query at this time? I do have one myself. We're currently experiencing a changing of the seasons here in the springtime, and it makes me think about how this seasonal nature can relate to our spiritual journeys and different cycles for our spiritual journeys. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the correlation to the changing of the seasons on our planet and in our environment, and maybe even how we can utilize those to benefit us on our spiritual paths. I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my brother. Indeed, each entity within all of creation is affected by the movement of the sun, the moon, the stars, the weather, the light, the dark. All of these cosmic forces are streaming into your environment at all times in various degrees of intensity, so that in one season, such as the winter season, which is now ending upon your planet, which is the paucity of light and the majority of darkness that has an effect upon third density entities, they are more likely to be retiring into rest as the trees and flowers and grasses become dormant in the winter and find themselves more contemplative, meditative, and more able to realize their own limitations as mind-body-spirit complexes, and that the weather may require they remain indoors, find activities of a limited nature to pursue. Then comes the spring. The light begins to increase. The temperatures begin to rise. The flowers and trees and bushes come to life. And there is the feeling of growth, of expansion, of expression that comes from within that being that is sustained, inspired, supported by the changing of the season, so that there is the feeling of new life, new possibilities, new directions in which move and expand one's activities to move into the outer atmosphere, the yard and the garden, the larger world around one, to move in and out as the rivers of light begin to move within the being as well as without the being. These are the two more extreme examples of how the weather and times of season change for an entity that is sensitive to such changes. For there are other changes as well that are in the form of the cosmic streamings of intelligent energy that come from distant stars and galaxies that have an effect as well as the seasons upon the planet. As the galactic clock face has to offer the inspiration of the unity of creation, the particularization of creation in various and sundry ways, so that the entity upon your planet has these cosmic rhythms beginning to pulsate within the spirit that then moves into the mind and the body and inspires certain kinds of feelings and expressions of these feelings that correspond to the changing of the seasons upon the planet itself. For all are part of the great galactic cosmic oneness of all creation, and each part has an effect that it plays upon each other part, so that all may make their contribution to the great puzzle and mystery of unity. Is there another query, my brother? I have one somewhat related. As people are starting their gardens in the area, Ra talked about how a third density entity can interact with the second density entity in the form of a pet, and how the pet might benefit from that relationship by being imbued with love and becoming inspirited. I'm wondering if there's a similar relationship between a human and a plant that it cares for, and how these relationships might be same or differ from that between a human and a pet, and how we can cultivate that with the plant. I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. The second density creatures of the plants and the animal variety are examples of simple awareness that has the capacity to be imbued with the love of the third density entity that is either the master or the gardener. This capacity to be able to receive love is that which in both the plant and the animal is then fructifying the ability to give love by these second density creatures. This interaction between the gardener, the master, the plant, and the animal is one which reflects the larger overview of how each third density entity is imbued with the love of the one creator that enlivens each fiber of its being in each day of its incarnation, so that if the heart is open and the love moves freely through, then this love may be given wherever it is needed, whenever it is called for. The animal and the plant are those which, having this simple conscious awareness, call for that which gives them the inner feeling of being imbued with what would be called love, and which they see as a kind of food for their very nature of being, perceived by the animal through the mind and through the beginnings of the heart, by the plant through the tender care of the gardener, the watering, the fertilizing, the attention, the intention, perceives that which you would call love. It is a fertilizer for the plant. It helps the plant to grow. In fact, the love is even more efficient than the water or the fertilizer, for they are very basic in their ability to grow a plant. And yet the love of the gardener is that which imbues the plant with a kind of awareness that it is receiving something more, something greater, something inspiring, something that is so supportive at the very basic level of its being that it wishes to move towards the gardener and its ability to inspire the plant to grow, to become that which is more than it was, not only turning toward the light, as each plant will do to receive the nourishment of the sunlight, but turning toward the gardener to receive the nourishment of the love that moves from the heart to the plant. All are part of the great cosmic dance, wherein one form of life inspires and imbues another with a greater expansion, expression of their basic quality of love that has made the creation all about each entity, in which each entity can perceive in a more specific fashion from the pet owner, from the gardener. In this way, all are partaking in the dance of creation, the movement of consciousness, the expansion of perception, the opening of the heart, in whatever form it may take, so that the infinite love and the light of the one creator moves through all and gives all the greater experience of the one creator. At this time, we will ask if there may be any other queries from anyone in the group concerning their experiences this day in channeling our words and thoughts. Thanks for the opportunity, Quo. I think I have, but let's see if I can formulate it. Being so steeped in the philosophy of the law of one, I have a pretty decent grasp of it. So while I'm channeling, there's a part of me sometimes that is analyzing what's coming through. And sometimes I find myself dissatisfied with the content being channeled, maybe even concerned at times that it's not quite as accurate or correct even as it could be. So I guess I'll just ask if it's possible to speak to that experience. Do you have any advice? I am Quo and am aware of your query, my brother. Each instrument, in fact, each entity within the third density has a witness, that is the, shall we say, critic. Each entity is that which is performing upon the stage. It is that which is watching from the audience. It is that which writes of the performance and the reception by the audience of the performance. You are all things here. In this instance, it is well for the witness or the critic to wait until the performance is complete before offering its insights, for the insights that are offered suggesting what is falling short of the desired performance is that which is likely to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is better then to wait until the channeling has been completed and then look back upon it as you see it upon the paper and perhaps discover that you have performed far better than you realized. Is there a final query at this time? Quo, this question comes from Lou, who asked, Dear Quo, I would like to know a general overview of how both Mother Earth and its precious inhabitants is faring in the ongoing turbulence as we push our way into higher vibration. Also from the vantage point of harmony, has there been any notable progress that can be shared at this time? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my sister. We look out upon the landscape of your third density illusion and see there is much disharmony, separation, and confusion that is rampant upon the world stage. We see these elements as being potentially helpful if those entities upon your planetary surface are able to take a larger view and see beyond the personal self of self that is so engaged in gaining the needs of the self, the desires, the opinions, and the rightness of the self. The catalyst is thick upon the ground, shall we say. If it can be processed more and more successfully so that each individual entity takes a larger and larger view, moving beyond the individual self, the family, the community, the nation, the world, and begin to see that each as an expression of that which is sacred, that which is holy, that which is of the one creator, that which exists in all entities. When it is possible that the confusion and anger and separation and disillusionment may be melted away in the refining fires of love. For this is the opportunity at this time for your planetary population. If the catalyst is great and is faced squarely, there is the possibility of moving further and further into the fourth density of love and understanding, for there is yet a short period of time that remains for this movement to be made. And a great deal of catalyst would have to be processed in order for this movement to be made. And a great deal of catalyst exists in order that such movement can be made, for all knew before the incarnation that this could be the situation and this would be the way in which the movement forward could be made for all. It is our great hope that this step will be taken, the dance will be completed, and the fourth density will be a reality. At this time, we shall take our leave of this instrument and this group. We thank each of you of your conscientious efforts to improve as instruments. Each has made great strides forward. Whatever you think you have done better. We are known to you as those of Quo. We leave you now in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Adonai Vasu Boragas. This is just an amazing channeling. I don't think I gave the date of the channeling. This was created on March 10th, 2021, so it's very recent. So to begin with, let's talk about that last part of the channeling, where they're asking, how are we doing? Are we going to make it to fourth density? Essentially is what they're asking. And you can read between the lines of that it's looking pretty rough for us. We might be able to, but we need a great catalyst. There needs to be something big that happens, and we need to process this catalyst and move beyond just our individual selves and see the big picture. And hopefully we can do that. So I look at that last answer as sort of a warning that, yeah, it's possible. And you knew coming into it that it was going to be tough and it's going to be hard, but there's a lot that's happening, and hopefully we can process all this catalyst that's happening and we can unite as one, which is what they always emphasize without emphasizing. To begin with, this is talking about storytelling, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a fascinating aspect of anyone's spiritual journey. I believe, and they sort of hint at, because they say supposed, that what we're talking about in storytelling may be real. We're all in an illusion, but it may be another aspect of the illusion. So it's coming from somewhere. I really believe they were trying to get at the idea that, are these stories real? Are they coming from somewhere? The alignment of the questions where they're even asking about what these other worlds are like. Because one of the coolest things about the Law of One channelings is they mention, hey, we went out to another solar system and there's a whole other paradigm in the way that they view themselves and the archetypes and everything. It's like a whole other simulation. And so I think he was asking that to try to get some deep information about what it really was like. But the idea is storytelling is a powerful way for us to understand ourselves and understand the world around us. And the ability to sort of let go and get into the story is something that many of us are not able to do in the real world. I find it to be powerful. I was just watching The Punisher, which was originally on Netflix on Disney, as a Marvel fan. That's very violent. But you watch the story and you see what happens to the main character and you understand his desire for revenge. You may not say it's a good thing, but you understand it. The great thing about stories is you can go into the thoughts of the character and you can really understand. So what's happening when we're reading a story is we can have the worst serial killer in the world. We can read about their childhood and what happened to them, and we can understand. And in many cases, we can forgive them or even root for them in the worst scenarios, because everybody has a story. And so I found that to be fascinating, that when we move into fourth density, we start to see the story behind everybody. And if we could read everybody's book when we meet them, then we would totally be into them and totally understand them, and we would totally get what they're going through, no matter what they say or do. It's that process in fourth density that I think they were really touching on. I sure wish they would have told us more about what it was like in the other universes. I believe that in many of these other places, they reflect what we see in some fantasy novels. In any case, you can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.